Hey everybody, welcome back to the Sonic Chronicle. My name is Owen, and today we are back with another album review. Before we do begin though, please be aware that this is probably going to be my longest album review that I've done to date. It is pretty hefty in terms of what I've written out here as my script and my thoughts. So let's get started. Before we do get into the actual review though, please do hit the like button. Please do consider subscribing to the channel because it massively helps me out. And leave me comments in the comment section below if you agree or disagree with anything that I've covered over the course of this album, or if you just want to talk about the tea or the drama or what have you. With that done and out of the way, let's get into it. So, Lily Allen has just released a new album called West End Girl, and it is the talk of the town. Lily Allen is an artist that I did not expect to be talking about in 2025. Let's get into a little bit of backstory here. For those that might not be aware, she is an artist that rose to prominence after making use of Myspace to promote her music way back before social media really took off. She was part of an ilk alongside Justin Bieber and the like that used social media to their advantage. The track that catapulted her into the charts was Smile in 2006, a song about finding the joy in the misery of a former partner. She was massive. But really, she only released about 3 albums between 2006 and 2018. I actually had thought that she had left music behind entirely in 2010 when she had founded a clothing brand with her sister. Honestly, I never really rated or liked her music very much. It was 2006, 2008 or so. I found it to be too poppy, a bit shallow for my liking. I was also very young, that factor came into play there. As a person, I've really understood that Lily Allen has been kind of a favourite target for tabloids, making light of mental health issues that she's had, personal challenges. So it's easy to understand why she might have pulled back from that limelight and that spotlight a little bit. But now we have West End Girl, an album that takes us on her journey of the breakdown of her marriage to David Harbour, from what I understand. Lily Allen and David Harbour married in 2020, and from what I understand, they seem to be a great grounded couple. But when reports came out that Allen's profile had been found on Tinder, they had separated. Truthfully, though, I had heard allegations about Harbour being on Raya and being seen there before this had happened. Now, I took a look online and I didn't see a ton of information about the instigation of this being about Harbour's infidelity, but take from that what you will. This is information that I had heard, that I certainly believe I had heard prior to this taking place. So take from that what you will. This album is her side of the story, and it is a wild ride. It is emotionally jarring. It really leaves you with a feeling of whiplash from taking hit after hit, and it is musically incredible. First off, this isn't a crazy long album. It comes in at about 44 minutes across 14 tracks. The longest song is 4 minutes 23 seconds long, and that's about at the halfway mark. That's really because this sets up what to expect across this series of gut punches that you're about to experience. And what's mad about this is that this is effectively a concept album through and through. So I'm going to talk about this album and the different tracks the way that I've spoken about other tracks and other albums. I'm going to go through it track by track and break down each one. Unfortunately, there will not be sound samples because of the way that YouTube works, but I hope that this encourages you to go and listen to this album. Track number 1, West End Girl. As mentioned before, this is a real gut punch to set the tone of what you're about to experience. It makes you realize, whoa, what am I getting myself into here? Musically, it starts kind of sounding like the automatic drums on an early 90s Casio keyboard, like a rumba kind of setting. The bass really meanders beautifully, mostly following the vocal line, but deviating to accentuate the rhythms and playing off of the delicate marimbas that are in there. All of these instruments really come together beautifully, with some really interesting tempo shifts leading into the middle, which is a horrible precursor of emotional blackmail that we're about to experience in all of its disgusting detail. This juxtaposition of music and content is quite off-putting in some ways, but is thematically perfect for me. The lyrics go into the detail of an idyllic life with dark undertones that lead to this crescendo that is at the end of this track. Track number 2 is Ruminating, and this is probably one that is getting a bit of radio play, or actually, maybe it doesn't, but I'll get to that in a moment. This is an absolute banger, a natural follow-up from the opening track. A little bit drum and bass, but in a poppier kind of way. Big piano chords here really drive home the emotion. The vocoder is used beautifully here on her vocals, just enough to give it a sense of being ethereal, or at least feeling like you're hearing the thoughts running through her head at that point in time, which again is absolutely perfect. There is also a lower pitched vocal line behind her lead vocals that adds to that sense of darkness and doubt and depression kind of creeping in there. I said that I thought that this might be a really good radio track, and in some ways that is the case. However, there is some strong language there that would lead to this not being a radio favourite as well, which is understandable again given the subject matter. Track 3 is Sleepwalking. The style of this song shifts to like a real classic pop tune, almost like something from the 60s, very dreamy. Wouldn't be out of place in a movie from that 60s era where the hero is serenaded in a smoky lounge from the stage by the femme fatale before she steps down and notices him in the crowd and that kind of thing. The middle section brings in a distorted bass synth, I think it is, to add to that darker tone of proceedings. They're low in the mix, but they're very, very impactful before moving back to that initial sound. Also, the xylophone or glockenspiel, perhaps, is used to really great effect here as well. Track 4, Tennis. This song, it starts out sounding like a modern version of Days Like This by Van Morrison. Has a bit of a Macklemore vibe in there as well. Lovely bit of electric guitar, very crisp, works very, very well with the higher pitched piano sounds. Bass sounds like it could be on an air track. Really quality, elevated pop music. And it asks the critical question on this album of who's Madeline. Leads us on to track number 5, which is titled Madeline. This one really reminds me of a song called Girl You'll Be a Woman Soon by Neil Diamond. If you haven't heard that song, listen to it. It's creepy, but the music is really good, so I'm really, really torn about that song. Musically speaking, this really reminds me of that song, but not lyrically. It also, I suppose, reminds me in terms of the lyrical meter that is used here as well, or the vocal meter. The dynamics here are really great. Everything dropping out for the pre-chorus and coming back in with a gunshot is excellent. Really captures your attention. The arpeggios, minimal bass line allow the story and the vocals and content of this track to really flourish. Everything has been thought out across this album so far, and this track is no different. Track number 6, this is around that halfway mark. This is the longest track on the album. This is the 4-minute 23 long track called Relapse. The drum track here reminds me of something by the Postal Service, perhaps, or like Craig David's Rewind. Back to feeling a little bit more electronic. Everything else going on here really hangs on that idea of this being electronic. The synth sounds and the vocoder are back. Again, used to great effect to create a sense of these inner thoughts versus the storytelling aspects of the story when it's not in use. Track number 7, 4 minutes 1, a little bit shorter than Relapse, is titled Pussy Palace. This track is dark from the get-go, and honestly, this is a song that I've kind of had in my head, for the past couple of weeks, really, since I've started listening to this album. This track gives really defeatist vibes, bolstered really by the lyrical content. Written from the perspective of someone who loves another person and is really allowing their self-worth to be destroyed because they think that the other person loves them back, and this is what you do for people that you love. A pulsating beat that really gives, that really evokes imagery of making the trip downtown on autopilot that they have described through the lyrics. The scintillating synth sounds are like the lyrics, or like the lights streaking by you as you drive. It really comes across as truly tangible music. Track number 8 is called 4chan Stan. We're back to tracks that kind of wear their influences on their sleeves here. I get a sense that Jean-Michel Jarre was a bit of an influence here. Throughout the album, the bass has been a hero. No different on this song. I think it's quite funny and quite clever that throughout this album it's been the story of a sex addict, or at least it's been put up that this is the story of a sex addict emotionally abusing their partner, And on this track, they're comparing them to a 4chan user, and 4chan is, the home of incels. Really great writing here. Track number 9, Non-Monogamummy, with Specialist Moss. Specialist Moss, really great on this track, but a statement is made right out of the gates on this track. The guitar parts are brash and they're in your face. It's almost like jungle is a bit of an influence on this track, heading back into pop in the choruses. And the bass and the vocal meter really drives urgency, or I suppose maybe a sense of desperation at this point. As mentioned, Specialist Moss, his guitar vocals, or his guest vocals even, are an unreal touch on this track. So different to everything else up to this point. And not that things have gotten boring or stale, but it's like a sorbet palate cleanser before your next course. And on to the next course we go. Track number 10, Just Enough, 3 minutes 11 seconds long. Beautifully delicate high guitar part here that sounds like it could be a harp. There's strings, there's bass, there's vocals, nothing more. It's like a song that you'd hear at the end of the second act of a musical, just before heading into the third. Very classical in that regard. And before you know it, it's over. It's, as the title suggests, just enough. I think that maybe calling this, the end of the second act of a musical just before heading into the third is appropriate, because, it's a 14-track album, and that's the 10th track, right? So we're kind of 2/3 of the way through moving into that final third. So I think that's kind of spot on there in terms of track placement as well. Track number 11, Dallas Major. A big wah envelope on the guitar parts in this track. Big DJ scratches here as well. It's like it's a song from the early 2000s with modern sensibilities, with very airy, breathy vocals. In some ways, it's not dissimilar to what you might get from Childish Gambino on Redbone. And I do mean that as an enormous compliment. I love Redbone. In fact, the screensaver or the wallpaper on my computer is the cover of Redbone. I love that album. Probably not as much as Camp, but that's a whole other conversation to have. Dallas Major, really good song as well. Really talks about the challenges of trying to date in your late 30s, early 40s as well. Track number 12, Beg For Me. This song has intent. The poppiest version of industrial music that I think I've ever heard, with a massive sexy hook in the chorus. There's dark strings, there's synth drums, excellent vocal performance here, really put this one over the top. The backing vocals towards the end are almost to the second side of a conversation that's been had, leading into an outro of uh-ohs with a foreboding bass hum to close out the track. It's brilliant, absolutely. Track number 13 is Let You In. Very, very short track, 2 minutes and 9 seconds. This one is very stripped back. Guitar, layers of guitars, simple light drums. Lyrically, this one seems as though it's full of resolve and kind of comes across as the point where Alan decided to create the album in itself and put all of this out there. It has kind of come to terms with what has happened and is using this situation as fuel. It is also, in some ways, quite tender as a song. Almost as though she's kind of like, as again, come to terms with what's happened, but also maybe forgiven herself a bit there for allowing what happened to happen. Just a thought on that one. Track 14, Fruity Loop. This is the final track on the album. Again, this one seems as though it's about understanding the situation, realizing that the relationship was never equitable. There are some Air vibes on this track again, particularly in the bass line, combined with the drums, particularly the drum sound feels very early 2000s electronica, which I suppose is appropriate for a track entitled Fruity Loop, because for those who are unaware, Fruity Loops was a piece of software that you could use to generate drum tracks that was pure electronica. The end of the song is a fade out, but I will forgive it here. It closes out the album beautifully. As you can probably tell, I am a big fan of this album. I think that the story that's told here is very much worth telling. Allegations made here are important to be aware of. As I mentioned, this is very much a concept album, and in my opinion, it should be listened to in one sitting a few times before splitting it out into your preferred tracks, just to kind of ensure that the message and the concept is driven home. Alan has also stated publicly, that there is a fictitious element here, which really adds credence to this idea of a concept. That Madeline, who is mentioned in this album, isn't one specific person, but is more an amalgamation of people, which is noteworthy and potentially damning in and of itself. This is the story of a person who emotionally abused and used another person, who led that other person to believe that things were their fault and not the abusers. It's a story of how a person leaned on this to behave in a manner that was even more unacceptable, and to force the other person into a situation that they didn't really want in order to keep the former happy. It's a tough and jarring album to listen to, that really meanders. As I mentioned earlier, it gives you emotional whiplash, carries you through the same thought processes and the ideas that Alan went through at every step. And that is heavy stuff. And it is all dressed up in top tier, stylishly produced pop music. This is absolutely one of the best albums of the year, and you would be doing yourself a disservice to not give it a chance. And that is where we are going to leave this review. I think I've probably said enough and rambled on enough about this album at this point. Again, please do consider giving it a listen, even if you have not been into Lily Allen before. I was not, and now I am. So please do consider giving that a listen. Stick it on your to be listened to list. But that is it for this video, folks. Thank you so much for stopping by and for listening to me ramble about Lily Allen's new album. If you like what I do, please do hit the like button. It helps me out massively. Leaving comments also helps me out massively. And of course, I love to see the subscriber count go up as well. So if you like what I do, please do consider hitting the subscribe button. And all of my videos that I release from that point forward should be dropped directly into your subscriber feed as and when they become available. And of course, then as well, hit the bell for notifications as well, so that you're kept abreast as to what's going on here. As I mentioned though, that is it for this video. Thanks a ton for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.